Grace and peace and spoiler alert for Wonder Woman 84. My name is Ryan. I'm the movie pastor. I watch movies and I think theologically about them. Thinking theologically doesn't have to be a crazy Christian thing for people who go get degrees to do. It's something that we all do, whether we have any belief or not. I'll show you. Stick around. Man, this movie had so much to say. It was, literally preachy at times, but I think in a good way. For all its flaws, I think there's a lot here that we can dig into and appreciate, which is one thing I'm always trying to do in my interpretation of movies. So I made notes, and I'm going to go through them. The first kind of, I think, introductory concepts, which becomes a thesis statement for the film, out of that training sequence with young Diana, is the idea that no true hero is born from lies. The movie seems to really want us to understand and appreciate that message. So this is a movie about lies. It's a movie about deception, and it's a movie about truth and the opposite of deception and what it means and what it costs to live into honesty. This is, of course, I think something that we can appreciate. If you're any kind of Christian or any kind of person of faith, to let your yes be yes and your no be no is a kind of central part of living to your true self. So the question then is, what does it say? And as a foundational starting point for conversation, we need to appreciate that Wonder Woman takes place in a explicitly polytheistic universe. This is something that they established with the first movie, where she fought Ares. And they've committed to it. They're sticking with it. It's also true of the comics, but usually those kind of things get kind of smoothed over, right, as they did with Asgard in the MCU. Not in this case. Wonder Woman is fighting against gods. That's like gonna be her thing now for as long as this franchise lasts, apparently. And she's in this film reckoning with a monkey's paw that comes from a bad god, the Lord of Deception, a god of lies of some sort. So that's kind of as a genre where it's coming from for conversation. Now, it might be shocking for me to say this, but I would argue that there are numerous books of the Bible that actually come from that same perspective, that treat God as, it's what we call henotheism. They treat God as supreme, God as our God, but they do not deny the existence of the gods of the Amorites, the foreign nations' gods, or even abstract gods. Some don't, and some do, because that is such a useful way to talk, and that's such a useful way to draw illustrations in terms of the world we're living in. And so sometimes I will do the same, because, let's be honest. So in the last film, in Wonder Woman, she fought Ares. Ares is war. It's the Greek word for war. War exists. War is real. In this movie, she's dealing with a wish-granting entity, right? Essentially a cursed wish MacGuffin. Doesn't really follow traditional monkey paw rules, but it's like we can appreciate this idea of it's this thing that will give you your heart's desire. It's this thing that will give you what you want. We have those. Those exist in the real world, right? The idea of power over others. The idea of money, right? What's going to get me what I wish for? Well, money. If I live for money, if I make that the center point of my life, then I'll have everything I wanted. But what's it cost? Isn't that money god a monkey's paw? So to be a monotheist isn't to disbelieve in money, isn't to disbelieve in war, and at times it is to fight against those things, like face them as the personified challenges that they are. Lies. Lies is the one we're really dealing with. What does it mean for people to worship lies? Do we know anyone in our world who lives for lies, lives by lies? honors lies with their life. And that's where I think societal commentary really comes into this movie. This movie is called Wonder Woman 1984. It has very little to do with its setting in the 80s. I mean, that is in the background, literally in the costume choices. And there are like one or two scenes that address it. But if you could set this film in any year between the Great War and the modern day, why pick 1984? And the answer is obviously as a reference to George Orwell's famous social criticism. They're drawing references to say, hey, I've got stuff to say about that book that is about thought control. And this movie goes into that by creating a character, Max Lord, who is power hungry and who is willing to be just completely uninterested in the truth, right? It's baloney. It's worse than a lie, right? I don't care if it's true or false. I just care if it gets me what I want. There's one extremely explicit scene where he's talking to the president, and he says, "I believe in the power of positive thinking." Now, this is I'm not trying to to advocate for a particular political candidate or anything here, but that is obviously a Trump reference, right? Like Donald Trump has said, yes, I'm a religious person, and the reason I'm a religious person is because I like Norman Vincent Peale. I'm a Presbyterian. Norman Vincent Peale wrote the book The Power of Positive Thinking. He was a Presbyterian minister. So to have the villain go to the Oval Office and talk to the president about the power of positive thinking, that is on the nose. That is intentional, and there's no telling me it wasn't. Agree or disagree with what the movie is saying there, the movie is saying it. And so we're making comments about people who lie in public spaces. And by the time Max Lord gets control of the airwaves, with the desire to touch people through telepresence, with the desire to engage in a way that is physical over a non-physical medium, he starts to look a lot like a televangelist. And that's uncomfortable for me, because here I am, over the media, over a non-physical medium, hoping to touch your life, hoping to have something that is of value to give to you. I'm also a pastor in a pandemic, hoping to reach people and serve and share the gospel of Jesus Christ in a way that can be salve for their wounds virtually, so that I don't infect anyone and they don't infect one another. And I'm using a medium that is so reminiscent, so familiar to us from people who don't live for Jesus but live for lies. People whose true God is not Christ, the homeless person who taught us to love our neighbors as ourselves and to love our enemies, but people whose true God, things like money and things like power and things like fame. So many dishonest people are using the airwaves to blast their message out to as many people as possible, and they do incalculable damage, which is why truth matters so much. And it's why I try to be impeccable with my word in this environment, and I try to be as vulnerable as I can to try to counteract that. And I love what Wonder Woman did with that. Because it would be so tempting, and it would be so traditional. I'll say this too, it would be pretty male. In so many male-centric action movies, what you see is how do you confront lies? What happens when a villain who is the embodiment of lies is gaining power? And the answer would be you punch him in the face, right? How do I bring justice? I fight against it, and I present violence as the answer to injustice. We call that the myth of redemptive violence. A lot of movies, including a lot of movies that I love, centrally use the myth of redemptive violence to bring their message. Not so with Wonder Woman 84. Wonder Woman 84 puts Wonder Woman against a force of lies, and she defeats it with truth-telling. She defeats it with honesty. She defeats it with a counter message, a contrary message to the message that this faux televangelist, Max Lord, to this faux president who's taken the authority of the president, is sending out. And she says, I've got something more compelling. The theological word is winsome. I've got something better. Choose truth over lies. Truth might be more complicated. It might be run down and pushed over into a corner, but I'm going to present it, and I'm going to put it on the platform. Truth beats lies. Punches don't beat lies. And so for as many people as are like criticizing Wonder Woman and being like, it didn't have enough action beats, man, what a message for an environment where we're seeing more female-led stories, and we're asking questions about, like, what does the monomyth look like for women? Dorothy, right, does the same thing. How does she accomplish her goal? Like, by making friends, not through becoming the greatest ultimate fighting champion. So there's a lot of things that are being explored here, and I think it's right. Like, I don't think it would have worked if the way Wonder Woman defeated Max Lord was to, like, knock him off the pedestal and kill him. Because then she wouldn't have broken the cycle. The only way to break the cycle is with vulnerability. You can put a stopper in the bottle, but the bottle's still there. The only way to really fix the brokenness of the world is with sacrifice, with goodness, with love. So I hope that you are inspired to love one another a little more through the work of Wonder Woman 84, and I'll see you next time on Movie Pastor.